In the annals of American history, a dark chapter emerges. It's called redlining. This shadowy tale unfurls in the 1930s, a time when the insidious policies of redlining took root. Imagine the scene. Banks, armed with city maps drawing red lines around neighborhoods they deemed risky. Within these lines, dreams of home ownership for Black and Latino residents crumbled as banks denied them mortgages simply because of where they lived. The repercussions of such policies rippled through generations. While white families thrived, building equity and wealth through home ownership, Black and Latino communities were left grappling with the fallout. Lower property values, underfunded schools, limited business opportunities, and the specters of crime and poverty became the unwelcome companions of these neighborhoods. Now, you might think that with the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, redlining would be consigned to the dusty shelves of history. But alas, the legacy of these policies continued to cast long shadows over the pursuit of the American dream. Despite the act's noble intent to root out housing discrimination, the lingering effects of redlining persisted, etching deep lines of economic injustice and racial segregation into the landscape of American cities. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the specter of redlining still haunts us. The case of City National Bank stands as a stark reminder. Between 2017 and 2022, the bank faced allegations of perpetuating redlining practices, with claims that it discriminated against Black and Latino residents by underwriting fewer mortgages and minimizing marketing efforts in their communities. So, while the Fair Housing Act may have outlawed the explicit practice of redlining, it seems the ghost of this policy continues to linger in the shadows. The effects are still felt today, continuing to perpetuate economic disparities and racial segregation in our communities. And so the shadow of redlining continued to cast a long and somber silhouette over the American dream. The fight against redlining isn't over. It's a battle against systemic threads of discrimination woven into the fabric of American housing. The shadows may persist, but each step we take brings us closer to dismantling the barriers that hinder fair housing. As we fast forward to the years 2017 through 2022, a familiar name surfaces in the murky waters of redlining allegations: City National Bank. This financial institution, with its grandiose name and towering skyscraper offices, found itself under the scrutiny of the Department of Justice. The allegations were grave, accusing the bank of discriminatory practices against Black and Latino communities. The Department of Justice's findings were damning. They revealed a pattern of the bank underwriting fewer mortgages and minimizing marketing efforts in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. City National Bank, it seemed, had a preference for greener pastures, leaving our most vulnerable communities in an economic drought. The numbers spoke volumes. Over the course of 2 decades, City National Bank opened a mere one new branch in these underserved areas, a stark contrast to other financial institutions, which saw a surge in mortgage applicants from these same neighborhoods. This disparity in banking activity painted a clear picture of economic bias and systemic neglect. The allegations against City National Bank didn't stop at mortgages. They extended to the bank's marketing efforts as well. The Department of Justice found that the bank's marketing strategy largely ignored Black and Latino communities, further perpetuating the cycle of financial exclusion. In the face of these allegations, City National Bank found itself in a precarious position. It was no longer a matter of defending its reputation, but a question of how it could rectify the damage it had allegedly caused. The bank was accused of perpetuating the very practices that have haunted marginalized communities for decades, and the spotlight was now on them to make amends. The echoes of redlining, it seemed, were still reverberating through the halls of City National, leaving a chilling reminder of a dark chapter in our nation's history. In a groundbreaking response, City National Bank agreed to a substantial settlement. This settlement, totaling $29.5 million, was designed to rectify the bank's past discriminatory practices. The lion's share of this amount, just over 95%, will be funneled into a loan subsidy fund earmarked for residents of Los Angeles County's predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. However, the devil is always in the details. The specifics of how this loan subsidy will be administered remain unclear. There's a lurking fear that the fund could be exploited by white gentrifiers, particularly in areas like Inglewood, where the pulse of gentrification beats strongly with the construction of new sports arenas and entertainment venues. Beyond the loan subsidy, $500,000 of the settlement is earmarked for advertising and outreach within these communities. An additional $1.25 million is set aside for consumer financial education programs and community partnerships aimed at leveling the playing field for residential mortgages. The bank has also pledged to open a new branch in an underserved community and to conduct a community credit needs assessment. Skeptics, however, remain wary of the bank's commitment to these initiatives. The settlement is indeed groundbreaking. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clarke links it to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s lifelong commitment to tackling economic injustice. Yet a recent report from Fairplay underscores the persistent racial disparities in mortgage fairness, emphasizing the long road ahead. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada acknowledges the diversity of Los Angeles, but draws attention to the enduring issue of residential segregation, fueled by biases and systemic factors. While this settlement makes history, it does not top the list of largest settlements in redlining cases. Law firms such as Relman Colfax have secured larger sums in housing discrimination lawsuits against banks. As initiatives like the Biden administration's Combating Redlining Initiative gather steam, calls for more aggressive action against racially discriminatory banks grow louder. Yet, despite this historic settlement, a cloud of uncertainty hangs over the future of these communities. This case, while significant, is but a single piece in the larger complex puzzle of redlining. The persistent racial disparities in mortgage fairness, as disclosed in the Fairplay Research Report, serve as stark reminders of the systemic biases that still plague our housing markets. From the redlined maps of the 30s to the discriminatory practices of today, the specter of redlining haunts the pursuit of the American dream. Systemic factors play a significant role in perpetuating residential segregation. In the labyrinth of American housing, the walls of bias and apprehension are built brick by brick, creating a divide that is both physical and psychological. The neighborhoods that were once redlined, predominantly Black and Latino, continue to grapple with the same issues they faced decades ago. Lower property values, underfunded schools, limited businesses, and higher crime rates. Meanwhile, the predominantly white neighborhoods continue to flourish, their residents afforded the luxury of generational wealth through home ownership. The disparity is palpable, the injustice undeniable. Yet the battle against redlining is far from over. The systemic discrimination woven into the fabric of American housing continues to reverberate, its echoes heard in the halls of justice and the streets of our cities. The City National case has cast a spotlight on the issue, but it is not an isolated incident. There are other banks, other cities, other communities that continue to bear the brunt of discriminatory lending practices. The fight for fair housing is a nationwide effort, one that requires the collective action of our communities, our lawmakers, and our financial institutions. As we move forward, we must remember that redlining is not just a part of our history, it is a part of our present. It is a systemic issue that demands systemic solutions. The Biden administration's Combating Redlining Initiative is a step in the right direction, but there is still much work to be done. The battle against redlining is far from over, as the echoes of systemic discrimination continue to reverberate. But with each step we take, with each victory we secure, we move closer to dismantling the barriers that have hindered fair housing for far too long. The City National Bank settlement, though historic, prompts us to ponder the path forward in the fight against redlining. This fight isn't confined to a single bank or a single city. It's a nationwide endeavor, a commitment to rectify the deep-seated economic disparities that have long plagued our society. Let's take a moment to consider the larger landscape of redlining settlements. Law firms like Relman Colfax have achieved even larger victories in housing discrimination cases against banks. These cases, along with the City National Bank settlement, serve as a stern warning to financial institutions, reminding them that discriminatory practices will not be tolerated. And yet, despite these settlements, it's clear that financial penalties alone are not enough. We need to press for more comprehensive solutions, for more aggressive pursuits against banks historically engaged in racial discrimination. This is where the Biden administration's Combating Redlining initiative comes into play. This initiative, with its focus on addressing the systemic roots of racial discrimination in housing, has the potential to bring about meaningful change. It's not just about penalizing banks for past transgressions, but about creating a fair and equitable housing market for all. However, the task at hand is enormous. The systemic threads of discrimination woven into the fabric of American housing are deeply entrenched. Unraveling them will require more than just government initiatives and legal settlements. It will require us to confront our own biases and prejudices, to question the status quo, and to work towards a more equitable society. So, as we look to the future, let's remember that the fight against redlining is far from over. It's a fight for justice, for equality, for the dream of home ownership that is the birthright of every American, regardless of their race or ethnicity. The battle against redlining isn't merely a legal matter, it's a call to unravel the systemic threads of discrimination woven into the fabric of American housing. The shadows of redlining may persist, but we move closer to dismantling the barriers that have hindered fair housing. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share to help grow our channel so we can reach more viewers.